Hey guys, Quantum here, and a few days ago I posted a video outlining some Emerald Steel gameplay. And for those of you that don't know, I did last minute, literally the morning of, woke up, went to a store championship. They still had a ticket, registered, and got in 15 minutes before the tournament started and opted to play Emerald Steel, a deck that unfortunately I didn't have too much experience with. But the benefit for you, if you're watching this video ahead of maybe another store championship that's coming up this weekend, unfortunately I'm not going to be able to compete in any others. But if you watch this video about Emerald Steel, whether you decide to play this deck or want to play against it, I definitely took away some very, very valuable learning points from playing this deck that I would like to share with you guys. Before I do, though, I just want to shout out my local game store, Mana Lounge. Some people from around my area came into my city to compete, and they actually recognized me or asked about me. So shout outs to you guys. And then just my local players, a very, very competitive scene. Again, those of you who would have came into the city and played against those guys, you know how good they are. And while I didn't make top eight, I was very close. I just lost out on tiebreakers, unfortunately. I can't take anything away from the players in the scene. Again, your local scene is how you get better, so embrace it, guys. That's the spirit of competition. You can't be mad or anything about it. You just gotta pick it up and just get better, right? If I wanted to make top eight, I should have gone 4-1 and not 3-2, right? But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and jump straight in, and I will save the reasons why I decided to play this. Well, maybe I'll cover it a little bit in this video, but I'll probably do a tournament report and outline that a little bit more. But to start off with the one drop slots, I decided to stick with kind of what was the established meta deck list with the Captain Hooks and the Cursed Merfolk. In hindsight, and I guess I can't really say because I haven't tested it much online, if any really, and obviously in person I haven't tested it, but I think I would swap out the Captain Hooks for the Robin Hood package, and I'll maybe discuss what I would swap out on the top end in order to play the big Robin Hoods. But the Captain Hooks just felt a little underwhelming. I think going into the Dorset Championships, I was not necessarily scared of, but a little worried about other aggro decks. And there was only like one that I knew of, and an Emerald Amethyst player, and this deck just mops that up anyways. And you shouldn't really be too scared of aggro, because when you actually take a seat back or take a step back and look at what the deck does in terms of its song package for removal, like you deal with aggro anyways. And so the Captain Hook, while it can be good to slow things down, it's not going to do enough against the Emerald decks that just are going to quest with their own Merfolks and Flynn Riders anyways to force the discard if you challenge. And while Captain Hook in the late game is obviously more impactful than a 2/2 one-drop Robin Hood that you might top deck, it's not really that much more significant. They both get outed by anything that deals 2 damage. You probably don't want to quest with this Captain Hook since it only deals 1 damage back. And so it can be a little underwhelming. Ruby Amethyst wasn't really a thing at the store championships for me. If you have a Ruby Amethyst heavy meta, this might be better because this trades into all the Merlin and Mim cards. But overall, I think I would opt to cut the Captain Hooks if I had to play this deck again for the Robin Hoods, if you have them. The Cursed Merfolk, it's a staple card. I've talked about this many times on market watches and stuff. Probably, the number one drop now for aggro decks and obviously for Emerald. You don't care about the 0 strength like you have on Lilo and Maleficent. You're questing for 2 and you're forcing a discard, and this can combo with Prince John if you get a Prince John up and they have to challenge this and they're like, oh, I'm going to discard and you're going to draw. But again, that doesn't really come up if you're playing against good players, and I'll kind of explain that interaction a little bit more a bit later. But yep, pretty good card in the Merfolk. This is your ideal one drop, especially on the play where you can just start aggressively questing. So you definitely want to mulligan for that if you can, especially when you're on the play. In the 2-drop slot, we've got the Flynn Riders and the Smees. So obviously, the Smees, I don't want to say combo, but synergize with the Captain Hooks to prevent taking damage. But because you are kind of an aggro-focused deck to a certain degree, and most likely the Smee is going to act as a board control card later on, most likely, like reducing or preventing the 1 damage by having a Captain Hook on field, I don't think is as significant, at least in practice, as I thought it would be. Because many times when this thing even just had like 1 or 2 damage on it, I was swinging it into something to take something out anyways. I don't think I ever quested with this to the point where it pinged itself and it got banished off of its own effect. There were times I had to send the hook on the board, and it did, allow me to quest without worrying about taking the damage. And in very niche scenarios, like against other steel decks, they can't Storm Rage on it, etc. If you don't take the 1 damage, that could come up. But overall, I just don't think that package at least for me, was worth it, or my play style. Now the Flynn Riders, again, just another aggro discard card, similar to Merfolk. Yeah, on the play, if you can be pretty aggressive with like a turn 1 Merfolk, a turn 2 Flynn, even if you get grab your swords later on, hopefully not shift 3 grab your swords where your cards get wiped on turn 3, but you know, questing with these cards for a couple of turns puts you at like 10 lore, and if your opponent does not have any way to stop it, you're very far ahead. Also rounding out the 2-drop slot, we've got the discard package in the Ursula Deceivers and the Sudden Chills. Depending on the deck that you're playing, you have to use this card very strategically. Against the mirror match, sometimes casting it on 2 is very useful, so you can kind of see their hand, what you have to play around, and potentially discard some of their high impact songs that they could sing with the Ursula Deceiver of All, things like Let the Storm Rage On and Opposing Sudden Chills if they have the Prince John combos. Overall, though, this card is extremely powerful. You really do want to try to save this for when it's going to be the most impactful. Again, sometimes that is on the turn 2, sometimes that's on turn 6 for a Be Prepared, sometimes that's on turn 4 for a whole new world, or you know, turn 3 to snipe out a whole new world, prevent a shift if you see a shift coming, that kind of thing, or a pull away or grab your swords if you want to set up a certain kind of combo. So you got to think through your lines and when it might be applicable to play this. You have to know the meta, know what other decks are playing. I talked about this a little bit, I think, in my tournament report, where I was a big fan of Mufasa decks, the 60 character version, because they play around things like this and Benja, which everybody's playing, if they're on these colors. And, you know, in that case, this is obviously ink in most scenarios, unless you just want to take a look at the hand. The Sudden Chills, this card, it's very good when you get the specific combo off with it. I will say that. But the issue is, if you don't see this early enough and with the combo, like there was one game that I started top decking into this. I wasn't in top deck mode, but I had like 1 or 2 cards in hand. And like I drew into one, and then the next one I drew into another one, and I'm like, man, this thing has like no impact right now, right? And so you just have to be aware of that. If you know that you don't draw any of your lower cost cards with this deck in the early turns, know that you're drawing them in the later part of the game where they're going to be much less impactful, because this deck kind of just wants to hit you hard and fast. And so again, maybe if you're on the play, or if you know what your deck you're going on, you want to aggressively mulligan for a specific kind of package in order to start getting the effects off of these high impact actions. I'm also playing Two Babooms. I think this card was good. I don't want to say it overperformed or underperformed. It was kind of just, it did what it needed to do kind of thing. Most of the time it was just ink, but in certain scenarios, it's nice, like especially in the mirror match, to take out like a Smee that had damage on it, or a Flynn Rider or something like that, before it quested and got its lore. So interesting there. In the 3-drop slot, 4 Benjas. What's funny is I don't think I even popped 1 item in my 5 matches with Benja. So I played an Emerald Amethyst in the beginning, in round 1, no items. I played an Amber Steel Song in round 2. They were playing flutes, but I didn't see a Benja to pop a flute. In round 3, I played against the mirror match, no items. Round 3, I played against Mufasa, no items, no song, just straight 60 characters. Round 4, I played against the mirror match, no items. And then round 5, I played against Amethyst Steel locations with no items. So not as impactful as you might think. I think there was one player from our local scene who was on Ruby Sapphire. There were no Sapphire Steel. There were no... there was, I think, a Sapphire Steel, but not in the top tables. And then there was, I don't think any other... Well, there was one other Ruby Sapphire. So not as items were not as represented as I thought they were going to be. There were more Steel Song decks around. And so, you know, if I would have ran into those, this card would have been very good. But yeah, did not pop a single item with my Benjas across 5 matches. And I don't even know how many, or I should say 5 rounds. And I don't even know how many matches. But I don't think you cut this because, again, at worst, it's ink or a 2 quester. So again, yeah, a meta call if you want to play 4, but I think it is very impactful when you do get it off, the item pop. 4 Prince Johns. Now, this card, and this is where if you're going to play this deck, you need to make sure you do your testing, because I did not test enough with this deck. And in theory, you know, Prince John with like Ursula, Sing Sudden Chill, setting up the Prince John and questing with Merfolk to say like, yeah, go ahead, challenge it, and you know, you're going to discard, I'm going to draw. Singing the Sudden Chills, like I said, and drawing 2. I got that combo off once, and you know, I was already so far ahead that it didn't even matter. But like the Prince John combo, your opponent, if they're smart, they know how to play around it. They know to either dump their hand and go into top deck mode, just flood the board, or they'll, just opt to limit the impact of what your Prince John can do. So for example, if you have like an Ursula and the Prince John, they'll play very aggressively to out this so that you can't sing the sudden chill. They'll find alternative means in order to get rid of your Cursed Merfolk so they don't have to challenge it, that kind of thing, because they don't want to give you the draw. And then, if this just sits there and they know you're not going to quest with it, they might just say, okay, I'm just going to race you. I'm in top deck mode. I've got 3 characters on board. I'm just playing whatever I top deck. I'm not letting you get the discards off. I'm not keeping a hand. And if you play this card, I think you absolutely need to play the 4-drop Donald, because if they choose not to draw off of that, that's fine. You just draw 2. Because you expend your resources so quickly in this deck, this is one of your key draw engines, and without it online, especially if you see this card, it's uninkable, you have to basically play it out. It is a liability. So just keep that in mind. That's one of the things I definitely picked up, and one of my regrets with this deck was not playing the Donald Duck. But just be aware of that with the Prince John. When you get the discards off and the draw is happening with Prince John, the deck is basically unbeatable. So it's very, very strong. For Ursula, Deceiver of All. So like I mentioned, you sing the Sudden Chills with this to discard 2. And usually what you want to do, right, is you play this on turn 3. Then on turn 4, you play your Prince John and you sing Sudden Chill with this. I did this combo once to somebody. I drew, 2 cards off the Prince John. They discarded 2. That was a +4 swing. It was absolutely insane. And that's a game-winning play, basically, right there. Like, if you got those 3 cards in rotation, it is so strong. Of course, you also ideally want to sing this card with this because this represents a draw 2, pot of greed, basically, and then deal 4 damage to anything on board. You can split the damage up, take out a particular threat. Very, very strong. And then in certain scenarios, when you have like 3 or more characters on board, usually you can sing Strength for a total of, like, if you have 3 characters on board, 6 damage. There was one time I think I had 5 characters on board. I sung this. I dealt 5 damage to 2 different things and just wiped the board. This thing can get over resist in certain scenarios. Online, I don't know if I did it in the video that I posted, but I know I sung Strength with, I don't even think it was the Ursula. I think it was like the Prince John, but it had 7 characters, and I just dealt 7 damage to a Cinderella Stout-Hearted, which overcame the resist 2 to deal 5 damage to it and take it out. So, 4 strength to go along with the Ursula, and 4 of the Let the Storm Rage on. So, very important package to combo off with. What I will say too is the games that I ended up losing, they were very close. They were all game 3s. I did not see the Ursula when I needed to see it. In one game, I didn't see it at all. And in another game, I just saw it way too late when the opponent kind of already had game on board. So I will say, when you play this deck, this card is basically what the deck is. Which is weird to say, but that was my experience, at least in the limited time that I played it. If you don't see the Ursula, you're just going to be struggling and playing from behind basically the whole time, because this card is basically your engine generator. Sorry, I shouldn't say engine generator. It is your Swiss Army knife. You can discard and draw with the Prince John with this on field, getting a tremendous advantage. You can out opponent's boards. You can draw and deal damage with the Let the Storm Rage on. Like, there's so many versatile plays that you can make with her. And just the fact that she essentially just pluses you whenever you sing with her, you gain that advantage, right? You take out 2 cards with this, and then she's probably safe for next turn where she readies up and then sings another song, right? You probably out 1 threat and you draw 2 cards with this. It's absolutely insane. With the Sudden Chill, it's, 2 resources gone from your opponent, whether or not you have the Prince John, right? And in certain scenarios, when your opponent has a weak board and maybe they're planning for a big combo in their hand, you rip their hand apart and it's just game over from there. Like, a Sudden Chill could be a game-ending play with the Ursula. I checked in 1 copy of Cloud Kicker. In hindsight, I think I would have wanted to play more of this because I did not expect the mirror match to be so prevalent. I think there were 8 Emerald decks at the store championship, of which I think there was 9 Emerald decks, if I didn't say that, and 8 of them were on Emerald Steel. I think it was something like really, really high ratio like that. And this card coming down, especially on the draw, to out the opposing Ursula is a big tempo swing. It's a very good control option. So in hindsight, again, would have played more of this. Wish I did. If you anticipate aggro decks too, like, again, instead of playing the Captain Hooks, maybe I play more of this, right? It does enough to slow aggro down too. But just the fact that it bounces the opposing Ursula is really, really strong. I opted to take a page from the online deck list and try out the Daisy Duck. In hindsight, this was a big mistake. I would not have played this at all. I think there was maybe two games where I maybe got the quest off and forced the discard, and it was meaningless, really. So, in hindsight, I would probably cut these for the Donalds, and yeah, I'd much rather play that, or maybe just play one of this or something. But the Donalds would definitely be more impactful, in my opinion. So I should say one of the reasons why you play this is because, with the Prince John on field, you have very limited discard options, right? So like if you don't have a sudden chill, it's like, what is Prince John doing? At least with the Daisy Duck, you can quest and force a discard. You need your Merfolk, you need your Flynn Riders, and you need your opponent to challenge them with your Prince John in order to discard. But like I said, smart players will dump their hand. Smart players will find other ways to out the Merfolk and the Flynn Rider so that they're not giving you the draw off of the discard from the Prince John. So like being able to forcefully get a discard off by questing with the Daisy Duck is nice, but like the problem is, right, you play this, it's so slow, it's so telegraphed, right? They're gonna out their hand so that you don't, quest and get the draw. So just be aware of that. Like it's nice on paper, but in practicality, it's very slow. And I've talked about this many times in my videos, and you're seeing it actually, or at least I did, play out in the real, like, competitive scene where you need to play cards that have immediate impact and immediate effects. When you play cards that are too slow, it's just your opponents are going to play around them, right? And that's just going to become more and more of a thing as we get more and more powerful cards as the game gets power crept with each set. So just keep that in mind. A card like Friar Tuck, though, I think, like, I understand how it's very good and very powerful because, again, it's immediate impact when you play it. But I actually did this mistake online where I played this when I had more cards and it made me discard. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good to know for tomorrow if I decide to go to the store championships or if I'm able to make it. And so, like I said, at least I learned that interaction online the night before when I woke up and went to the championship to register. But in comparison to Daisy, they're both 4 cost. But this has immediate impact. So when you play this, like if you don't have the Ursula right away, you get a Prince John on turn 3, and your opponent has more cards in hand, you drop the Friar Tuck. This is way more impact than this, right? Because this will force a discard right away, and this will give you the draw off the Prince John immediately. And so finding these combos and these synergies within the deck is very important. Again, it's hard to play a deck that I wouldn't say so reliant, but like when you want to try to combo your cards in a certain way to get that advantage, I was drawing this without Prince John. I was drawing Prince John without this. Or when I drew this, my opponent, I had more cards in hand than my opponent, or the opponent already had no cards in hand. So it's just like limited application here. At least it does quest for 2. It's a 4/2 body. And like I said, Ruby Amethyst wasn't really a thing at my locals. There was like one player, and they actually were like first after Swiss or something, or like second. They were like 4-0 until like the very end, avoiding out of those like 8 Emerald Steel or whatever. Like they avoided all of them in the Swiss rounds, which is crazy to me. But congrats to them. So they definitely put in that work with Ruby Amethyst. But yeah, it does get outed by Mint Box and things like that. So you just got to be aware of that if you are in a Ruby Amethyst heavy meta. And then I opted to play 4 copies of And Then Along Came Zeus. Oh, sorry, 3 copies of the 4 cost Along Came Zeus. Most lists were on 2. I just wanted the extra removal spell, I guess you could say, because I was like, well, if the opponent is on no cards in hand, at least Daisy Duck can sing this. If I don't need to quest with it, it does quest for 2, so it's still very valuable. Friar Tuck can sing it. And, I didn't know Emerald Steel was going to be such a presence, but like this card outing the Beast Tragic Hero was also pretty big. But also because I don't have direct location removal in like Rise of the Titans and stuff, I did hit like I think it was a Queen's Castle against the Emerald Steel deck that I played in the final round, and then finished it off with a Friar Tuck actually. So like there's like little interactions like that you can use when you're dealing against Amethyst location decks. And then the final card, or the final 4 cards in the deck, is for Beast Tragic Hero. This card is also like one of the critical pieces. I don't want to say you need to see both of these, but if you do see both of these and you start getting the draws off of this, it just feeds the Ursula, right? Feeds the songs. You're most likely winning that game. Funny story. Like I didn't really see this card all that often, but this card is kind of still like a liability. Like, and this is why you saw Beast Tragic Hero being dropped from some lists, because like once you play this on turn 5, because this deck doesn't ramp, right? So you're playing this on turn 5. it's very like, you know, okay, here's a Beast Tragic Hero, let me out it, right? Let me damage it against Steel Song, let me ping it against Emerald Steel, let me ping it with something, stop the draw. Yes, it's a 7/5 body after that, but I can deal with that after the fact. I just want to stop you on your draws. And so this card didn't actually draw that much when I did play it. And you know, seeing it early, it's basically ink. So a little underwhelming, but you know, you have to play it when it does go off. It's also obviously very, very, very powerful. So keep that in mind. The biggest takeaway, like I said, is I wish I would have played the Donald Duck just for that guaranteed draw. I think that would have played a huge role, but you can't really say too much until you test some more. So haven't been on Pixelborn, you know, with end of the month of April. Work has been busy and taxes and stuff are due here in Canada. So got to make sure you get all of your stuff in a row before you move on. But let me know if you made it this far in the video, if you found this deck profile helpful. Learn from my mistakes. If you are playing this deck or you are playing against it, you now know some strategies, how the decks will likely be played, and kind of, you know, what you need to do if you want to maybe be a little bit more effective and combat this deck in the meta. What I will say to round it out though, if I was cutting the hooks for the 1-drop Prince Johns, I would probably cut the Daisy Ducks for the higher cost Prince Johns, maybe 1 Friar Tuck for the fourth, not Prince John's, for the Robin Hoods, who's fighting Prince John actually in the Disney lore. But yeah, these for the 5-cost Robin Hood shift. Would I want to play more Cloud Kicker? Yeah. Would I want to fit in Donald? Yeah. But what would I really trade out? Maybe a Benja, maybe one of the Smees, or maybe just cut it down to even 2 Smee, because I don't think I need that much of the aggressive pressure. Plus, this being a big body is kind of mitigated by the fact that if I play the big Robin Hood, like it's a 3/6 that shifts on 3. So there is that. I think, you know, you're pretty saturated with 2 drops, and the Ursula and the Flynn Rider, in my opinion, are a little bit more impactful than the Smee. So there is that. And like I said, the Benja, while in theory, and I would not cut this card because it's so good when it does go off, but like I didn't out a single item, so it just felt really underwhelming. So you're gonna need to tailor your deck to the meta, but those are my takeaways from my small experience with the deck. Let me know, again, in the comment section below how your store championship went. I got a lot of comments from people saying, you know, they watched some of my videos, they used some of my decks, my tips, and they, you know, top 4 got their stitch. So I'm very happy to hear that. And again, big shout outs to my local community. You guys are awesome. You definitely put up a good fight. And so hopefully we can all make each other better and we can get some good representation from Ontario into, what are they called, the challenge events or whatever, when they happen in Lorcana. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, Quantum is out.